Hello friends, my name is Amsud. Today we shall discuss about a topic, the two-factor authentication. Friend, this is a very important topic, and nowadays this is a very common topic with respect to security point of view, and very general term whenever we talk about security applications. So this is a very important topic with respect to that two-factor authentication. So let's start, friend. First of all, I would request to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell option as well so that my new videos can reach to you. So let's start. Two-factor authentication. If you just see the term two-factor authentication, so that means we are basically referring to authentication in software applications which is based on two-factor. Now what is the concept here of two-factor authentication? First of all, we have to understand the authentication. Authentication means that whenever we enter user ID or password in a software application, so it authenticate that you are the person which you are saying. Basically, authentication means that they are validating that you are a valid user, you are a authentic user, first of all. Now the two-factor authentication here, that means generally we use the single factor authentication. Single factor means that whenever you are trying to access a software application, for example you are using the mobile application. Okay, so generally we use the single factor authentication. That means you are enter only user ID and password, then you enter into the application. Either it's a mobile application, either it's a web application. So it is based on single factor authentication. That means you are only using the entering the user ID and password. Nowadays it is using a two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication means that either you have to enter the you send a OTP or one-time password on the mobile, or you use the biometric authentication along with the user ID and password. So that means what happens that whenever you enter a user ID and password, so first of all the entering of user ID and password, it is a first factor. Okay, then the second factor, that means you will receive a OTP, one-time password or biometric verification. So it is the second factor. So the authentication nowadays is basing or is relying on two factor. One factor is the ID and password, and the second factor is the OTP which you are receiving on the mobile, and then after receiving you will enter it on the application. So two-factor authentication, sometimes referred to as the two-step verification or dual-factor authentication, is a security process in which users provide two different authentication factors to verify themselves they are the valid users. Now friend, two-factor authentication is implemented to better protect both users' credentials. Credentials mean user ID and password, and the resources the user can access. Two-factor authentication provides a higher level of security than authentication method that depend on the single-factor authentication. That is, you are entering only the user ID and password, in which the user provide only one factor, typically a password or passcode. Two-factor authentication methods rely on a user providing a password as the first factor, and the second different factor, usually either a security token which you are receiving on the mobile generally, or a biometric factor. The biometric factor means that you have to biometrically, like your fingerprint, etc., of or facial scan or eye scan normally used. So for biometric verification, normally for biometric verification we use the fingerprint. So that means basically what happened, that whenever for example you are using a mobile application which is financial based, for example, so what happened, like you first you have to enter the ID and password, and then you will receive a passcode or one time password on your mobile registered mobile number, which you have to enter on the next screen of application. Once the application receives the ID and password and the security token as well, so based on these two factors your authentication will be verified actually. uh, then there are two-factor authentication adds an additional layer of security to the authentication process by making it harder for attackers or the fraudulent activities to gain access to a person's devices or online accounts, because even if the victim's password is hacked, a password alone is not enough to pass the authentication check. Why? Because see, if like for example a single authentication failed, a single factor failed, like the user ID and password is compromised or shared, still if the person don't have the mobile, or they don't know about their security token, so still they are not able to use the mobile application, or they can't access the application actually. Friend, and there are other factors, the two factor authentication factors. First factor, a knowledge factor, is something the user knows only, such as the password, personal identification number, pin, or some other type of shared secret. For example, whenever you are using the ATM machines, so normally it is based on the pin, personal identification number, or password, user ID and password normally used on the web application. Remember, all these types of information are the personal information. Only that person who is using these basically pin code or passwords, the only person who is the owner of the knowledge, he only knows about these factors of these knowledge. Then the possession factor is something the user has, such as an ID card, a security token, cell phone, mobile device, or a smartphone app to approve authentication request. That means, friend, normally what happened, that you will receive a mobile or security token on the registered mobile number. Okay, you can only then you knows it very well that this is your OTP, and this is you will receive it on your registered mobile number, and then you can access, you can enter that security token, and then you can enter. The biometric factor means that, friend, normally biofactor means the fingerprint, the facial access, or the speech patterns, keystroke dynamics, etc. So there are so many other factors they use to access for the authentication factor as well. Then, friend, the other factors which are used for the authentication, location factor is also another factor. That means a location factor is usually denoted by the location from which an authentication attempt is being made. This can be enforced by limiting authentication attempts to specific devices in a particular location, or by tracking the geographic source of an authentication attempt based on the source internet protocol IP, or some other geolocation information, such as global positioning system, that is called as GPRS, data derived from the user's mobile phone or other devices. So this is another type of authentication which is normally nowadays is common thing and used as well. A time factor restriction, user authentication to a specific time window in which logging on is permitted, and restrict access to the system outside that window. So all these are nowadays common factors. So basically, friend, what happened, that whenever we are using any important financial application or some other type of important application, we use two-factor authentication or multiple layer of authentication, so that the user credentials, the user data will be protected as well. So friend, thanks a lot for watching the video. I hope you like this video. If you like, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and thanks for watching the video.